In my hometown, when a man wants to marry the woman he loves, he must personally craft a rowing boat to serve as the wedding boat. On the 7th anniversary of our relationship, my boyfriend Julian finally built a beautiful boat. Just as I was about to step aboard, I overheard his friend asking him in a hushed voice, "Are you really giving the boat to Ivy? Aren't you afraid Serena will make a scene?" Seriously, Serena has quite the temper. Be careful you don't push her too far. Julian just laughed, sounding completely certain of himself. She won't. Serena's the easiest to handle. She loves me to death. Besides, in her hometown, if a woman's still unmarried at 28, she's basically an old maid. Besides marrying me, who else would want her? Anyway, I'll give Serena the marriage certificate and Ivy the wedding boat. It's perfectly fair. An old maid. So that's all I was to him. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. I just took out my phone and sent a message. "Mom, I accept the arranged marriage you set up for me." The new boat, wrapped in roses, began its procession, and people started cheering and pushing. "Serena, get on the boat. Serena, after 7 years, you're finally getting married." My best friend Summer sounded genuinely excited and happy for me. Under everyone's gaze, Julian stepped off the boat and walked in my direction. He only paused beside me for a moment before walking past. He finally stopped in front of Ivy, his tone relaxed and indulgent. "Your birthday present. Do you like it?" An eerie silence fell over the crowd. Ivy covered her mouth, her eyes full of delight. They walked hand in hand toward the boat. This time when he passed me, Julian stopped, his tone casual. "Serena, I'm giving this boat to Ivy first. The next one's already being built, so don't worry." Some people watched the drama unfold, others watched me, as if waiting for me to throw a fit. But I just looked at him calmly. "No need, Julian." He froze slightly, as if he hadn't expected this reaction. Sensing the awkward atmosphere, Julian's friends started speaking up for him. "Serena, don't overthink it. Julian's just fulfilling her birthday wish." "Right, you'll definitely be Julian's bride." I listened to their clumsy excuses, feeling like laughing. My best friend Summer was beside me, grinding her teeth. How can Julian do this? He knows full well that a man can only build one rowing boat in his lifetime. A sourness welled up in my chest. Yes, in this waterside town, even 3-year-old children know that a man can only marry with the first boat he builds to ensure a lifetime of love. Her voice beside me was choked with emotion. "Serena, I feel so wronged for you. An assistant trying to climb the social ladder. Is he blind?" Actually, she wasn't just a simple assistant. She was also the daughter of an old family friend of the Prescotts, entrusted to their care. So he gave Ivy unlimited favoritism. He'd bring her to various occasions, and any holiday gifts he gave me would also include one for her. Even the wedding boat I'd been looking forward to for 7 years could be given to her, because of a birthday wish. "It doesn't matter anymore, Summer." I patted her hand. Soon, the two on the boat finished the procession ceremony and came ashore. Ivy still had a trace of a smile on her lips as she bounced over, her tone as cute as ever. "Serena, Julian's just fulfilling one of my birthday wishes. Don't overthink it." Julian, such an intimate way to address him. I was about to speak when I was interrupted. Julian stepped forward and pressed his hand on my shoulder. "Serena, it's just a boat. There are so many people here. Don't make a scene." His tone was still gentle, but his eyes carried a warning. "I won't." I stepped back and smiled, nodding at Ivy. "Happy birthday." The moment I finished speaking, an eerie silence fell around us. Julian looked at his empty hand and froze for a moment. That made sense. In the past, I would have made a scene by now. Summer couldn't stand it anymore and questioned him loudly. "Julian, you gave the boat to her. What are you planning to use to propose to Serena? She's already waited 7 years for you. Give us a straight answer." Everyone's eyes fell on him. I also looked at him quietly, a faint hope rising in my heart. "Julian, this is the last chance I'm giving you. 1 second, 2 seconds. My fingers dug hard into my palm, and just as I was about to smooth things over myself, Julian chuckled lightly and spoke casually. "Next time for sure." Light, dismissive, and perfunctory. The last trace of love in my heart popped like a balloon and finally fell silent. Summer's eyes turned red with anger beside me, but I held her back. After the procession ended, they were supposed to hold a banquet on the boat and drink. Some passers-by watched the excitement. "Another couple's getting married. That wedding boat is so grand." Someone shouted. "Congratulations." Ivy stood at the bow, tugging on Julian's arm. "Julian, I have another birthday wish." Her voice was loud, drawing everyone's attention. "I want you to be my boyfriend for 7 days." The atmosphere instantly exploded. "Say yes. Say yes." Julian laughed and ruffled her hair without a moment's hesitation. "Deal, but just 7 days." From start to finish, his gaze never once turned to me. Ivy glanced at me without leaving a trace, her smile growing wider. Friends in the know kept glancing over. Some sympathetic, some watching the drama, some pitying. It seemed like I, the ex-girlfriend, Shouldn't continue staying here. Just as I lifted my foot, Julian called out to me. Serena, you're leaving? Yeah, it's awkward for an ex-girlfriend to stay here. He frowned. Don't talk nonsense. I'm just fulfilling a young girl's wish. You take a cab first. I still need to take Ivy home. I'll bring you fried chicken tonight, okay? After speaking, he took the keys from my bag and rejoined the celebration. I stared at his back, my eyes finally starting to sting. After I got home, I received a video from Ivy. In the video, Ivy's face was flushed red. People pushed her into Julian's arms. Someone joked. I say, why not just hold the wedding with Ivy too? How can Serena compare to our Miss Ivy? Ivy laughed and cursed. You're drunk. Julian just watched with a smile on his lips but didn't deny it. Then came a message. Serena, why did you leave early? I'm sending you the video, so we can celebrate together. Strangely, seeing all this no longer stirred any waves in my heart. I just stared at the rowing boat in the video, lost in thought. Julian used to constantly tell me that this was a major life event for girls from the waterside town, and nothing could be compromised. The deck had to be made of rosewood, the railings on both sides had to be wrapped with my favorite magnolia flowers. The windows on the boat had to be designed by me personally. I still felt some regret. After all, I'd been looking forward to it for a long time. But not for the person, for the boat. When Julian came back, it was already late, and he entered empty-handed. When our eyes met, he paused, then walked over and hugged me like usual. A strong scent of perfume hit me. The last time I wore perfume was 5 years ago. Back then, he frowned and said the smell of perfume made him nauseous. Only today did I learn that his nausea was selective. He looked at me, his tone still gentle. The party went a bit late. Still awake? Waiting for me? I didn't respond, only asking, where's my carrot cake? Without looking at me, he picked up a nearby glass and took a sip of water. When I was taking Ivy home, she said she wanted to try it, so I gave it to her. Didn't you say you wanted to lose weight for the marriage certificate photo? We can eat it another time, okay? This was the third time he'd said this. I'd been saying I wanted to eat it since half a month ago. He said he'd buy it, bought it 3 times. The first time, halfway there, Ivy called him to accompany her to view houses. The second time, Ivy was being ostracized by her colleagues, so Julian went to eat sushi with her. And then today, I sighed and suppressed the sourness in my heart. Julian, let's break up. The glass in his hand trembled, then he scoffed. Changed your tactics? You think I won't call you out on it? You're really not giving up, are you? I froze, not understanding what he meant for a moment. He laughed coldly. Today you had Summer pressure me to propose, didn't you? What, the forced proposal didn't work, so now you're playing hard to get. Only then did I understand. He thought I had Summer say that to pressure him into proposing. I found it absurd but didn't bother explaining. I nodded. Yes, the forced proposal failed, so I want to marry someone else. After I finished, the mockery on his face deepened. Serena, could you really bear to break up with me? Enough already, don't blow this out of proportion. You're already 28 and we've been together for 7 years. Besides me, who else could you marry? Go to bed early. Tomorrow we still need to go to my house for Grandma's birthday. He turned and went back to the bedroom. I watched his back, feeling only deep exhaustion. The next day, I still went to attend Grandma Prescott's birthday party. After all, Grandma Prescott had given me a jade ring, and I had to return it. When I arrived at the Prescott house, Julian's mother stood at the door. Ivy was holding her arm with a bright smile, looking every bit the future daughter-in-law. Ivy saw us first and immediately smiled, walking toward me proactively. Serena, Julian said you were angry. I thought you weren't coming today. She deliberately shook the jade bracelet on her wrist, the one the Prescott family gives to their daughter-in-law. Grandma Prescott's was a ring, Mrs. Prescott's was a bracelet. Julian had long ago gotten the bracelet from his mother, saying he'd personally put it on me someday. Now it seemed that wouldn't be necessary. Julian also saw it and explained in a low voice. Ivy's just borrowing it to wear. She'll return it. Don't overthink it. Mrs. Prescott also walked over, her expression indifferent, her tone carrying a hint of admonishment. You're here? I heard about yesterday. It's just a boat. Ivy is all alone now. It's only right that we care for her more. Rein in your temper and don't make people laugh for no reason. Everyone thought I would lose my temper, but no one stopped Julian from doing that. I found it rather laughable. Julian reached out to habitually put his arm around my waist, trying to comfort me with an intimate gesture as usual, but I smoothly avoided him by stepping aside. His hand froze in midair, and Julian's brow instantly furrowed. What are you making a fuss about now? Julian lowered his voice, his tone carrying a hint of suppressed anger. It's Grandma's birthday. Don't ruin everyone's mood. I'll apologize to you when we get home, okay? I calmly raised my head to meet his gaze. I'm really not angry. I took out the jade ring and handed it steadily to Mrs. Prescott. Mrs. Prescott, please give this to Miss Ivy as well. I won't go in and disturb Grandma Prescott. At this, Julian's pupils suddenly contracted. Ivy clutched her skirt, looking aggrieved yet understanding. Serena, are you sulking? Julian, this is all my fault. I was too greedy to accept that boat. I'm the one who made Serena angry. How about I return the boat and the bracelet to her? As she spoke, she seemed to remember something and hurriedly tried to remove the bracelet from her wrist. But somehow, though the bracelet was quite loose, she couldn't get it off. Sure enough, the tension Julian showed when he saw me take out the ring disappeared. He laughed coldly, snatched the ring from my hand, and walked toward Ivy. No need to return it. I said if I'm giving it to you, it's yours. Here, wear the ring too. Then he looked at me, his eyes full of disdain. Fine, Serena. Let's see how long you can keep this up. Since you don't want them, Ivy can wear them all first. Didn't you say you weren't going in? Why are you still here? In the past, the more he provoked me like this, the more I'd do the opposite and would stay. But now, I only felt relieved. Then I'll head back first. Then I turned and left. Behind me came Ivy's considerate attempt to mediate. Julian's anger seemed even greater, his voice louder. Let her go. She's desperate to get married and starved for love, trying to manipulate me with this. She should look at how old she is. I didn't look back and got into a taxi. Mom's message came through right then. Serena, look, this is your rowing boat. In the picture, that boat was bigger and more beautiful. Most importantly, the entire hull was covered with my favorite magnolia flowers, not a single rose. Back home, I started packing my things. Simple clothes, documents, slowly organizing everything. There were also photos of us together over the years, each with writing on the back. I flipped through them one by one. The one from Eri Lake, he wrote. Going to cling to Serena for life. The one watching the sunrise together, he wrote. Serena is more beautiful than the sunrise. I put them all away, hesitated for a moment, then threw them in the trash. After a while, the sound of a car engine came from downstairs. Because it suddenly started raining, Julian came back quite early. The door was pushed open, bringing in a scent of Ivy's perfume. I didn't stop what I was doing and folded the last piece of clothing. Julian changed his shoes and walked to the bedroom door, leaning against the frame. He casually draped his suit jacket over his arm, irritation evident in his expression. Are you done yet? His tone wasn't harsh, but it was full of condescending dismissiveness. I glanced up at him, closed the suitcase, and prepared to zip it up. My indifference completely wore away the last of his patience. He strode over and yanked my suitcase away. The force was heavy and the case made a sharp sound. Are you ever going to stop? He frowned, his brow knotted. I've had a mountain of work at the company lately. I've been really busy. These past few days, you've been giving me the cold shoulder. Do you have to let everyone laugh at me? You're not busy. You still have time to coddle Ivy. Most importantly, they've never been laughing at you. They've been laughing at me. I haven't been giving you the cold shoulder. He grabbed my wrist, offering what he thought was a compromising concession. I know you're unhappy. It's just a boat and some jewelry, right? Those are all small matters. Everything about me is a small matter. Everything about Ivy is a big deal. I looked at him and suddenly remembered what he said in the group chat that day. Serena's the easiest to handle, loves me to death, would never dare to really make a scene. Let me tell you something. Tomorrow Ivy and I are going on a business trip. He leaned down, brought his face close to my ear, and threw out what he thought was his most enticing chip. When I get back from the trip, I'll make time to get the marriage certificate with you. You've waited 7 years. Isn't this what you've been waiting for? I'll satisfy you. He said it as if it were the most natural thing, as if getting the marriage certificate was some great favor to me. In his heart, the wedding boat could be given to someone else, his favoritism could be given to someone else. All the exceptions and special treatment could belong to Ivy. Only that cold marriage certificate was my fate. I looked at him and suddenly laughed, laughing at how my 7 years had rotted on that wedding boat covered in roses that never belonged to me. And seeing me laugh, Julian thought I'd been appeased, completely relaxed, his expression growing even more at ease. Happy now? Wait for me at home like a good girl. He walked toward the door, taking out his phone and tapping it twice as he went. I still need to video call Ivy and prepare for tomorrow. I interrupted him. Julian, I'm going back to the waterside town tomorrow. I need to. His phone suddenly rang. He raised his hand, stopping what I was about to say. Ivy, what's wrong? The voice on the other end sounded panicked. Don't be scared, I'm coming right over. Hanging up, he put on his jacket while saying to me, it's thundering outside. Ivy's most afraid of thunder. I'm going to check on her. Whatever it is, we'll talk later. Then he hurried out. The words get married were forcibly swallowed back. Julian rushed out. On the road, his phone buzzed a few times. He scoffed, assuming that since he'd just agreed to get the marriage certificate with me, I was getting anxious again. When he reached the building where Ivy lived, he opened his phone, only to find it wasn't a message from me. Julian, remember to attend the wedding of the Ashford heir next week. Following that was a picture of a wedding invitation. After seeing the content clearly, his hand froze on the car door. The rain was a heavy, relentless sheet against the windshield of Julian's Mercedes. The wipers scraped against the glass with a monotonous, irritating rhythm as he sat parked outside Ivy's apartment building. His phone buzzed in his hand. He had assumed it was another message from me, perhaps a tearful apology, or a long, paragraphs-long text detailing my grievances as I had done so many times over our 7 years together. He was prepared to ignore it. He was prepared to let me stew in my own quiet anger until he returned from his business trip with Ivy, at which point he would throw me the bone of a marriage certificate to quiet my complaints. But when he unlocked his screen, the notification wasn't from me. It was from his chief business partner, Marcus. Julian, remember to attend the wedding of the Ashford heir next week. It's a closed-door event, but the Prescotts were lucky enough to get an invitation through our shipping accounts. Don't mess this up. Below the text was a digital image of the invitation. It was a heavy, cream-colored card with a gold embossed border. At the center, printed in elegant, raised calligraphy, were 2 names: Ethan Ashford and Serena Vance. Julian stared at the screen. The wipers flicked water across the windshield, but his world had suddenly gone very still. Serena Vance. His throat went dry. He blinked, rubbing his eyes, convinced the light of the screen was playing tricks on him. Serena's last name was Vance, but she was an ordinary girl. When he had met her 7 years ago in the city, she was working a quiet job at a local gallery, living in a cramped studio apartment with mismatched furniture. She had never spoken of her family, except to say her mother lived in a traditional waterside town several hours away. He had always assumed she was poor. He had assumed she was lucky to have captured the attention of a rising entrepreneur like him, a man whose family was slowly carving out a name for themselves in the city's logistics sector. Vance, Julian muttered, his fingers tightening around the edge of his steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. It's a common name. It has to be someone else. But deep in his chest, a cold, sickening knot of panic began to tighten. The door of the passenger side clicked open, and Ivy climbed in, bringing with her a gust of wet wind and the cloying, sweet scent of her expensive perfume. She shook her umbrella out onto the floor mat, her face pale but her eyes bright, with a delicate, helpless look. "Julian," she whimpered, reaching out to clutch his arm. It was so loud inside. The thunder. I felt like the whole building was shaking. "Thank you for coming." Julian didn't turn to look at her. His eyes were still fixed on the gold-embossed invitation on his phone screen. "Julian." Ivy's voice lost a bit of its sweet pitch, her brow furrowing as she noticed his rigid posture. "What's wrong? Is Serena still making a fuss about the boat?" "No," Julian said, his voice flat, sounding distant even to his own ears. He slowly put the phone in his pocket and started the engine. "She's not making a fuss." "I knew she wouldn't," Ivy said, her small mouth curving into a satisfied, quiet smile as she leaned back against the leather seat. "Serena's always like that. She pretends to be angry, but she loves you too much to actually do anything. She'll be waiting at home with dinner when we get back from the trip, just like she always is." Julian didn't reply. He drove through the dark, rain-soaked streets, but for the first time in 7 years, the comfort of his absolute control over me felt like sand slipping through his fingers. The morning after the storm was quiet. The rain had cleared, leaving the city air cool and smelling of wet concrete. I woke up at 5 a.m., before the sun had even cleared the high-rises. My body felt light, stripped of the heavy, suffocating weight of expectation that had pressed down on my chest for 7 years. I didn't rush. I made a cup of simple black tea, sipping it as I looked around. The apartment. It was a space I had spent years decorating, the linen curtains I had hand-dyed, the small ceramic pots I had collected from local markets, the wooden dining table I had polished until the grain shone. None of it belonged to me anymore. Or rather, I no longer wanted any of it. I carried my single suitcase to the entryway. I took my set of house keys, unclipped the key to the front door, and laid it quietly on the glass console table near the mirror. Beside the key, I placed a small velvet box. Inside was the simple silver band Julian had given me on our 3rd anniversary. A promise ring he had told me would be replaced by a diamond when his business stabilized. His business had stabilized 3 years ago, but the silver band had remained. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been chewed to pieces over the years. Downstairs, a sleek, black sedan was already waiting for me at the curb. The driver, an older gentleman in a dark suit, stepped out the moment he saw me, bowing respectfully as he took my suitcase. "Miss Vance," he said, his tone warm and formal. "Your mother sent me. The road to the waterside town is clear." "Thank you, Robert," I said, stepping into the spacious, leather-scented back seat. As the car pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the apartment building. One last time. I had thought my heart would break, that the 7 years of my youth would rise up and demand some sort of grief. But there was only a vast, empty peace. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a message from my mother. Ethan is waiting for you, Serena. The boat is ready. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, watching the city skyline slowly fade into the rolling green hills of the countryside. For 7 years, I had shrunk myself to fit into Julian's narrow world. I had accepted his dismissiveness, his mother's coldness, and Ivy's calculated, sweet provocations because I believed that love was a test of endurance. I had believed that if I stayed long enough, if I was patient enough, he would finally see me. But love was not a test. It was not a prize won by the most obedient servant. We're almost there, Miss Vance, Robert said, his voice breaking through my thoughts as the car crested a hill. Below us lay the waterside town. It was a beautiful ancient place, its stone houses clustered along the banks of a wide, emerald green river. The water was dotted with wooden boats, their sails white against the morning light. And there, parked near the grand dock of the Vance estate, was a boat that made my breath catch in my throat. It was a traditional rowing boat, but it was larger and more grand than any I had ever seen. The hull was crafted from dark, polished rosewood, its grain shimmering like silk under the sun. But it was the decoration that made my eyes sting. The railings, the bow, and the stern were wrapped entirely in thick, fragrant wreaths of fresh white magnolias. Not a single rose. Beside the boat stood a man. He was tall, dressed in a simple white linen shirt and dark trousers, his dark hair ruffled slightly by the river breeze. Even from this distance, I could recognize the quiet, steady posture of Ethan Ashford. He had been my childhood friend, the quiet boy who lived in the estate neighboring my mother's. When I had left the waterside town 7 years ago to follow Julian to the city, Ethan had stood on the dock, watching me go with a look of quiet, tragic resignation. He had never tried to stop me. He had only said, "If you ever get tired, Serena, the river is always here." The car stopped, and I stepped out onto the damp grass of the riverbank. Ethan turned his head. When his eyes met mine, he didn't rush forward, nor did he offer some grand, dramatic gesture. He simply smiled, a slow, warm expression that made the remaining chill in my bones disappear. "Welcome home, Serena," he said softly. The business trip in the neighboring city was supposed to last 3 days, but Julian spent the entire time in a state of quiet, simmering irritation. "Julian," Ivy said, her voice pouting as she sat across from him in the luxury restaurant. She was wearing the jade bracelet she had borrowed from Mrs. Prescott, her wrist resting prominently on the white tablecloth. "You haven't eaten a single bite of your steak. Is the hotel not to your liking?" Julian glanced at her wrist. For some reason, the green of the jade, which had looked so delicate and fitting on his mother, looked gaudy on Ivy. It felt loud, almost desperate. "The steak is fine," Julian said, setting his fork down with a sharp clink. "I have a headache." "Is it because of Serena?" Ivy asked, her eyes wide with a fragile, innocent concern. "Should I call her and explain? I really don't want her to be angry with you because of me." "No," Julian said, his voice sharper than usual. "Don't call her." Ivy flinched, her lip quivering slightly. She wasn't used to Julian using that tone with her. Usually he was all indulgence, ruffling her hair and laughing off her tantrums as youthful energy. Julian pulled out his phone. He had tried to call me 5 times that morning. Each time, the call had gone straight to voicemail. He had sent 3 texts. "Serena, stop this. I told you we'll get the certificate when I return. Don't be childish." None of them had been marked as read. With a tight jaw, he dialed Summer's number. The call rang 3 times before Summer answered, her voice dripping with venom. "What do you want, Julian? Where is Serena?" Julian demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "She's not answering her phone. Is she still staying at her mother's?" Summer let out a sharp, mocking laugh over the line. "Oh, she's not at her mother's, Julian. She's home. Her real home." "What are you talking about? Did you really think Serena Vance was some poor, desperate girl who had nowhere else to go?" Summer's voice rose, filled with a satisfying, fierce anger. "She spent 7 years living in your cheap apartment, using her own gallery, commissioned to pay half your rent while you built your precious company. She gave up her inheritance, her family, and her position in the waterside town because she stupidly believed you loved her. But she's done, Julian. She accepted the Ashford Alliance. She's getting married next week." The phone line went dead. Julian slowly lowered his hand, the phone slipping from his fingers and landing on the table. The noise of the restaurant, the clinking of glasses, the soft, classical music, the laughter of the other diners, seemed to fade into a high-pitched ring in his ears. An arranged marriage. The Ashford family. Ethan Ashford. Julian. Ivy reached out to touch his arm, her voice laced with panic as she saw the sheer, pale terror on his face. Julian, what's wrong? You're sweating. We're going back, Julian said, standing up so abruptly his chair tipped over. Backward, crashing onto the carpet. But the business meeting's tomorrow. I said we're going back, he roared, his voice drawing the eyes of every diner in the room. He snatched his coat from the back of the chair and strode out of the restaurant, leaving Ivy standing alone at the table, her face red with embarrassment. The wood of the Magnolia boat was cool beneath my palms. I sat on the low bench of the deck, my fingers tracing the smooth, polished surface of the rosewood. The scent of the fresh magnolias was thick in the air, a clean, sweet fragrance that made the city's concrete dust feel like a lifetime ago. Ethan sat opposite me, holding the wooden oars with practiced, easy strength. He rowed slowly, the boat gliding through the emerald green water with a quiet, soothing murmur. My mother told me you built this yourself, I said, looking at the hand-carved railings. It must have taken years. 3 years, Ethan said, his voice calm and steady, matching the rhythm of the oars. I started when your mother told me you were planning to stay in the city permanently. I wanted to build something that would be waiting for you, just in case you ever decided to look back. I was so blind, Ethan, I whispered, my eyes lowering to the water. I spent 7 years waiting for a man who thought I was a burden, a man who gave my wedding boat to his assistant because of a birthday wish. I thought that was what I deserved. Ethan stopped rowing. He let the oars rest against the sides of the boat, leaning forward to look at me. His eyes were dark, deep, and filled with a quiet, unshakable warmth that made my heart hammer in my chest. You never deserved that, Serena, he said, his voice low and firm. In our town, the wedding boat isn't just a tradition. It's a promise. It's a man's way of saying, I have built this shelter with my own hands, and I will spend the rest of my life rowing you through the storms. Julian didn't give Ivy a boat. He gave her his promise. And he left you in the rain. I looked at him, the remaining trace of pain in my heart finally dissolving into the quiet river water. The wedding is next week, I said softly. Are you ready? Ethan asked, reaching out to lay his hand over mine. His palm was warm, rough with the calluses of a man who worked with his hands, a stark contrast to Julian's soft, sterile fingers. I've never been more ready, I said, turning my hand over to lock my fingers with his. Julian arrived at the apartment at 3 a.m., his car tires screeching as he parked in the courtyard. He didn't take the elevator. He ran up the stairs, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps as he shoved the key into the lock of Unit 1204. He flung the door open, his heart pounding against his ribs as he called out my name. Serena. Silence answered him. The apartment was dark. It smelled faintly of lavender and cold, empty air. He lunged into the bedroom, flipping on the light. The closet doors were open. My suitcases were gone. The vanity was clear of my simple skincare bottles. The small ceramic pots I had collected from the markets were missing from the windowsill. He ran back to the living room, his eyes scanning the empty space. On the glass console table near the entryway lay a single key and a small velvet box. He opened the box. The silver promise ring stared back at him, its simple metal looking dull and cold under the hallway light. No, Julian whispered, a sudden suffocating weight pressing down on his chest. No, she's just staying at Summers. She's trying to punish me. She's trying to make me beg. He strided over to the kitchen trash can, kicking it open. Inside lay the torn pieces of our Polaroid photos. He reached down, his hands shaking as he pulled out a scrap of a photo from Uri Lake. On the back, his own handwriting was torn in half. To cling to Serena for life. A cold sweat broke out across his forehead. He realized, with a sudden, sickening clarity, that this wasn't a tactic. It wasn't a forced proposal. She had left him. The phone in his pocket buzzed. It was his mother, Mrs. Prescott, her voice hysterical over the speaker. Julian, where are you? The Ashford Group. They just pulled their entire logistics contract from our company. They said our family lacks integrity and that they do not do business with people who do not respect their vows. The bank is calling in our expansion loan, Julian. We are ruined. Julian's hand shook so violently the phone slipped from his grasp, cracking against the hardwood floor. He fell back against the wall, sliding down to the floor, his head in his hands. For 7 years he had treated me like a convenience. He had assumed that, because I was 28, because I loved him, I had no choices. He had believed that his wealth, his status, and his mother's family name made him superior. But the wealth he had built was a fragile glass castle, and the foundation of that castle had been Serena Vance. Julian? Ivy's voice came from the doorway, her eyes wide with terror as she saw him sitting on the floor in the dark. She was still wearing the jade bracelet, but it looked heavier now, like a set of handcuffs. Julian, the News. My dad said the Prescott shares are plummeting. What did Serena do? Get out, Julian whispered, his voice dead. What? I said get out, he roared, slamming his fist against the floor. Take that bracelet off and get out of my sight. The Grand Waterside Festival was the most spectacular event of the year. The riverbank was crowded with thousands of people, their voices rising in a joyous hum as they watched the fleet of wedding boats gather near the Vance docks. The water was lit by thousands of floating lanterns, their golden light reflecting off the ripples like stars. At the center of the fleet lay the Magnolia boat. I stood at the bow, wearing a traditional white silk gown, my veil of antique lace fluttering gently in the river breeze. Beside me stood Ethan, looking regal, in a dark, high-collared coat, his hand resting firmly on mine as we prepared to board. Serena. A frantic, desperate voice broke through the music of the flutes and drums. The crowd parted slightly as a man pushed through the security line, his clothes wrinkled, his hair messy, his face pale and covered in sweat. It was Julian. Behind him, Mrs. Prescott and Ivy were struggling to keep up, their faces pale, with a mixture of anger and humiliation. Serena. Julian screamed, reaching the edge of the dock. He tried to step toward the boat, but two of the Vance family's personal guards immediately moved to block him, their expressions stone cold as they crossed their wooden staffs. Julian, I said, my voice calm, carrying clearly over the quiet water. I didn't look at him with anger. I didn't look at him with regret. I looked at him with the cold indifference of a stranger. Serena, please, Julian cried, his hands reaching out toward me over the guard staffs. I was wrong. I was so stupid. The boat, the next one is almost finished, Serena. It's twice as big as Ivy's. I'll build you 10 boats. I'll sign the marriage certificate today. Just please, don't do this. Don't marry him. Mrs. Prescott rushed to his side, her face red with embarrassment as she looked at the wealthy, aristocratic guests gathered on the surrounding docks. Julian, stop this. She's just a girl from a waterside town. We can find someone else. Shut up, mother, Julian screamed, not turning his head. We are ruined without her. The business, the loans, everything is gone. Serena, please. I love you. I've loved you for 7 years. I looked at him, and for the first time, a small, sad smile touched my lips. You didn't love me for 7 years, Julian, I said, my voice steady and quiet. You loved having someone who was easy to handle. You loved having a woman who would wait at home while you gave your exceptions and your special treatment to someone else. You gave Ivy the boat, the bracelet, the ring, and your 7 days of love. And you gave me the scraps. Serena, Ivy whispered, stepping forward, her fingers trembling as she tried to remove the jade bracelet from her wrist. I'll return it. I'll return everything to you. Just please don't ruin Julian. Keep it, Ivy, I said, not even looking at her. It looks very fitting on you. You both deserve exactly what you have built. Ethan stepped forward, his arm sliding around my waist, pulling me close to his chest. His posture was protective, a solid wall of strength that shut out the noise of the world. The wind is rising, Serena, Ethan said softly, his eyes fixed on my face. It's time to sail. Yes, I said, turning my back on the riverbank. The guards released the ropes, and Ethan picked up the oars. The rosewood boat glided smoothly away from the dock, the white magnolias shedding a few fragrant petals into the emerald green water as we moved toward the center of the river. Behind us, Julian fell to his knees on the wooden planks of the dock, his hands clawing at the empty air as he sobbed hysterically, calling out my name over and over again into the gathering dark. But his voice was swallowed by the sound of the flutes and the cheering of the crowd. I looked at Ethan and he looked back at me, his eyes reflecting the golden light of 1,000 lanterns. The boat sailed smoothly into the wide open water, leaving the 7 years of my dark, cold cage behind in the ripples of the river. I had finally stepped onto my wedding boat, and the promise was whole.